Hello, fishing friends. Welcome to another episode of The Fishing Podcast. I'm your host, Landon DeKaiser, and this is where I interview industry greats, average Joes and Janes, biologists, conservationists, and everything in between. My goal is simple. I want to inspire anglers to catch more fish, more places, more often. How's it going, everybody? I hope you had a fantastic Christmas, and I hope you're getting out and doing a little bit of fishing, as long as spending time with the family, of course, over the holidays here. So this episode is going to be a little bit different, and hopefully it'll be pretty short. It's just me today, and I wanted to talk about a few different things, but at the beginning of this podcast, I had always meant to do an episode where I just kind of introduced myself, explained what the podcast was all about, and what I'm trying to accomplish by creating this podcast. And I never did, and I figured I'll just do it eventually. So I'm taking the time now with the new year starting to go over some things and tell you a little bit more about what I'm trying to do here. So my background is very similar to most people that fish today. I grew up fishing. My dad took me fishing when we were camping at Brevoort Lake at the campground. We were camping there. I was probably 2 or 3 years old, and I can still remember it. And I remember just wanting to catch a fish very badly. And I did. I think we caught some bluegill and perch. And it was just, from then on, I just wanted to fish. We used to do a lot of smallmouth fishing on Lake Michigan. You can actually see the spot we fish when you drive over the Mackinac Bridge. And I grew up smallmouth fishing a lot and salmon fishing with both my grandparents. Started smallmouth fishing in Coldwater. We moved down there when I was about 7 years old. So we lived in St. Agnes until I was 7 in the UP, and then moved down to Coldwater. There really wasn't any trout or salmon nearby. And my dad fished, but he wasn't the kind of guy that was going to go drive 3 hours on the weekend to go catch a brown trout. So I didn't really grow up with any of that stuff. I did a ton of bass fishing and a ton of pike fishing. We really didn't have any walleye around. I'd never caught a walleye until we went to Canada with some friends when I was probably, I think I was 11 or 12, maybe 13. I don't know. I can't remember. Went to Canada with some family friends and a church group and caught some walleye, nothing huge, but came home and definitely wished I had some walleye around because those things are delicious. And I also grew up doing a lot of saltwater fishing in Florida. We would go every couple years usually to visit my grandparents and do a lot of inland waterway fishing. So I really grew up with all different types of fishing experiences. It wasn't until I really was in college that I started trout fishing with my cousin Dustin. And that led me to steelhead fishing, which trout and steelhead are really what take up a majority of my time. In the summer, I still do a lot of smallmouth fishing, but I'm always wanting to try something new and go new places and meet new people. And that, in a nutshell, is one of the reasons I started this podcast. One of a few reasons is this helps me to get out and talk to as many people as I can, meet new people, go new places, learn new things. And that's what I really enjoy about fishing, is just the variety and how many different things you can do in, even every state. There's so many different types of fishing opportunities. It doesn't matter where you live. If you want to fish for a different species, every weekend, you can really almost do that. So the other real reason I started the podcast is I wasn't finding a lot of podcasts out there that just covered a variety of fishing and all different types of fishing, because whether or not I'm ever going to get out to the West Coast and fish out in California for species that I don't even know the name of right now, I like to learn about it, and maybe that will spark enough interest that I will plan a trip out there. And that's really what I'm hoping this podcast can do for you and anybody else that's listening, is get you thinking about trying something new. If you grew up in one state and there's salmon or steelhead around, or you've never caught a pike before, get out and try something new, doing the same thing week after week after week after week. And I'll pick on bass fishermen a lot, because I used to be that way. When I was younger, I just wanted to go catch bass. I wanted to catch the biggest bass that I could, and as many bass as I could, and as many keeper bass as I could, and kind of keep track of that in my head, and almost had a scorecard running of how many I caught, and then that directly tied to how good I was. And I still do that in a way with a variety of types of fishing. I'm a very competitive person, and I like to track my progress. But I mean, it really is just more about being outside and enjoying the outdoors, and having goals and setting goals is something I'll get into in a little bit here. And that helps you to have more fun, but it's not necessarily about catching the most or the biggest. So, getting back to what this podcast is really about, I say it in the intro: help people catch more fish, more places, more often. So, in being able to do that really comes down to having some great guests, which I've been very lucky and fortunate to have some amazing guests on the show so far that are very knowledgeable people that can really help you understand fishing. And I would highly recommend, don't just take the podcast and listen to it and think that you learned what that person has to say. Because, you take people like Mark Martin or Roger Hinchcliffe, and I mean, these guys have a ton of knowledge out there on the internet. So if you want to dive deeper, those are the types of people that you want to go and check out what they're doing online, check out their social media, check out their websites. There's so much more to learn. I mean, these podcasts get people thinking, and you're going to learn some things from it, but it's only scratching the surface of the amount of knowledge that these folks have. I could probably sit down and talk with these people for 6 hours about fishing and just never run out of questions that I have. And there's so many things I always wish that I could have asked, like when I go back and re-listen to the episodes. So make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're checking them out and see what else those people have to offer. So far, I've had a decent variety of different types of fish that we've covered as well. And my goal is to have a farther reach. I want to have people from all over the world, and I want them to tell their story and how they came to be where they are today, what they fish for, and how they go about doing it. And that's starting to happen. I mean, I can see there's people from outside of the U.S. I've talked to people online. I've now had people from all over the U.S. on the show, and I've many more lined up for next year that I'm really excited about. But the really cool part is this is all kind of happening through a community that's getting built. You guys, my listeners, are the community. And without you guys and without the interactions that I have with you, it really wouldn't be possible. It's like a domino effect that, I talk to one person and they introduce me to somebody else. Somebody reaches out to me on Instagram, asks me some questions. Pretty soon, they're on the podcast, and it's just really cool to see. And I'm really thankful for that. And to say thank you, I actually have a special surprise I'm going to announce in just a little bit here. I'll talk about it in more detail. But before we get there, there's one thing that I want to talk about, something that's helped me to focus and to really get outdoors and focus what I want to do for the coming year. And that's goal setting. I'm big on goal setting for really anything in life, but goal setting can be a great thing to do when it comes towards having fun. And maybe this isn't for everybody, but it works for me. For example, the past couple of years I've done this, and last year some of my goals were things like I wanted to fish 20 new trout streams. That's streams that I had never stepped foot in or been in a boat. And I think I fished 22. I was tallying those up yesterday. Another goal that I had was I wanted to catch a 25-inch brown trout. My biggest one previously was 21, I believe. And last year I caught a 27, which absolutely blew my mind. Incredibly lucky and fortunate. There's people that fish their entire life and never catch a fish that big. And I might never catch another one bigger than that. I wanted to go elk hunting. Check that off. Went elk hunting with my friend Chad. I wanted to catch a trout on a mouse pattern, going mousing at night, and accomplish that one as well. I wanted to catch a peacock bass. Was able to accomplish that goal as well. Now, I try to line these goals up a little bit with things that I know are going to happen in the coming year. So I knew I was going to go to the country of Panama. My wife's family lives down there, and I knew they had peacock bass. So my goal wasn't necessarily to catch a peacock bass and then I planned a trip around it, but to set goals that line up with what you're doing already. And I only got to fish one day when I was down there for about 10 days, but I made it a point to make sure I went out one day and went fishing. And we caught a ton of peacock bass. My wife actually caught by far the biggest, I don't know, probably a 4-pound at least, maybe 5-pound peacock bass. Absolutely beautiful fish. So this year I have some goals, and to back up a little bit, I don't want, a lot of people are like, oh, it doesn't matter how big of a fish you catch or how many fish you catch. It's really just about the experience of being out there. And I agree with that. However, I like to continuously improve at things. My goal isn't to be better than you. My goal is not to be better than all my friends. My goal is really to be better than myself last year, to have improved, to look back and say, you know what? I actually am much better at finding brown trout and where they live and catching them. I mean, the first couple of years that I brown trout fished, it was painful. I mean, if I caught one brown trout, that was a fantastic day. And, it's still a good day to go out and catch one brown trout, but I've gotten a lot better at it, at finding out where I can go, how to catch them, what lures to use, how to present the lure properly. And when you start combining all these little things and just these little tiny improvements, you really start to see, your abilities increase just tenfold over and over each other. So my goal is to be better than myself, to improve on whatever I'm doing. So some of my goals for this year, again, we're going down to Panama to visit my wife's family, the country of Panama. We're not going to spring break Panama, for those of you that didn't know Panama was a country. And they have some of the best saltwater fishing in the entire world down there. So one of my goals is I would like to catch a tuna of any size, species, whatever. I want to catch a tuna or a rooster fish. I want to set some goals that are achievable. So if I don't go down there and catch both, that's fine. If I go down there and catch one or the other, great. But, preferably I'm going to try to catch both. So, and I'll admit, I'm going to hire a guide when I go down there. I'm not going to travel all the way to Panama and get to fish, 2, maybe 3 days if I'm lucky, and try to figure it out while I'm there. You can really waste your time going out and trying to fish for something you have no idea how to fish for. Sure, I'd prefer to have a friend down there that could take me for free, but for a few $100 to learn how to do something, I'll take that knowledge back there every year with me, and then I can do it myself. That is money well spent. You're paying for an education. So tuna and a rooster fish is on my goal list. I'm not going to try to fish 20 new trout streams this year. One, it was pretty exhausting. And two, I have some other goals that I'm trying to accomplish, and it really took up a lot of my time to do that this year. And I want to go back and fish a lot of the streams that I hit again and learn them really well. So this year I'm gonna scale that back down to 10 trout streams, but I want to catch 5 brown trout over 20 inches. That's pretty hard to do, but through all of my fishing over the past few years, and especially last year, I have places in mind where I think that's an obtainable goal. So that's where I'm setting that number. I want to go elk hunting again. I know that's not fishing related, but that takes up a lot of my time, especially mental time, planning, and my fun budget for the year. So I have one last thing on my goal for 2019, and this is leading back into the special prize that I had mentioned earlier. I want to get my guide license for 2019. Now, to be clear, I'm not planning on becoming a full-time guide and guiding all the time, but I would like to be able to guide sometimes, and I'd really like to be able to donate trips to nonprofit organizations, and you want to do that right. You want to have insurance. You want to be licensed, because you can get in some trouble, especially financial trouble if things were to go wrong. Not that they usually do while you're fishing, but it's better to be safe than sorry. So with that being said, for this prize, I am going to be giving away a 2-day full guided trip. So that's 2 full days on the river. It could be 2 days on the same weekend, could be 1 day in September and 1 day of March the following year. Whenever you want to go, whatever listener wins this prize can pick 2 days. Now, if you're not from Michigan and you live halfway across the country, I'm sorry, I can't pay for your travel here. But if you do make the trip out, we can make sure we find a weekend where we can get 2 days, and we can go fishing for whatever I know how to fish for. I'm willing to go out and take you out for anything. Now, with that being said, there are a few things that I consider myself to be much more successful at. Things like trout fishing, smallmouth, steelhead. Those are some great experiences that can be had in the state of Michigan that I have a lot of confidence I can take you out and will be successful. The trip can be in a drift boat. It can be wading, whatever you want to do. If you wanted to go and backpack into the middle of nowhere and try to find some brook trout, I know plenty of places to do that too. So, this is really all up to you. And if you're coming from out of state, I understand it's a big expense. So, if you are not from the state of Michigan, I would be happy to pay for a hotel room for one night to kind of hold you over from Saturday to Sunday and offset your cost of travel to get here. So, how am I going to decide who is going to win this? It's going to be a random drawing, and I'll have more information on how you can get entered to win that. So I'm planning right now to do a post each month on Instagram and on Facebook where, it's going to be the general comment, like, follow the page, invite X amount of people. Why? Because I want to get this podcast out in front of as many people as I can. And a lot of you have been doing an awesome job of sharing it, and I really appreciate that. So this prize is really a thank you to you guys for helping me build this community and for just being great listeners, and I really appreciate it. And I think it would be awesome to get a couple of you. Oh, and that's the other thing. It's for 2 people. So you can bring a friend, family member, and we'll go out and catch some fish and have some fun. I'll provide lunch both days on the river, so you wouldn't have to worry about that. I'll have all the gear necessary for anything that we're going to go fishing for. So really excited about that. Really excited to see who wins this and get on the river with somebody. Another thing I want to touch on today is people will make comments like, man, how do you catch so many fish? Or how are you catch such big fish all the time? I kind of laugh at that because I'm really not the best fisherman out there. I'm a very well-rounded fisherman, but I'm certainly not the best. And to be completely honest, like when you see anybody out there on social media and they're posting big fish pictures, or they're posting pictures of, them catching just tons of fish, they're still having days where they're not catching a lot of fish. And how did I learn all of the stuff that I know about fishing? Well, sure. Some of it is because I've spent a ton of time fishing in my life. But the reality is someone else has taught me almost everything that I know. And that someone else is many different people, starting with my dad. My cousin Dustin, who I fish with all the time, has taught me a ton of things about catching brook trout and smallmouth. I learned a lot with my buddy Bob and Andy. We went steelhead fishing a few weeks ago at the beginning of December, and you think you know something and you go fishing with somebody new and they just teach you a bunch of new stuff. It happens every single time. Brian Kosminski taught me how to go mousing. I didn't learn how to do that on my own. He offered to bring me the first time, and we went, and that's how I learned. Matt Gaylor from Michigan Trout Addicts. I will admit that guy has taught me a ton about catching big brown trout. If you want to catch big brown trout, that is one of the people I would say knows, that I know at least, that knows the most about it. Where to find them, how to catch them, and joining his Facebook page and the group. There are a lot of people in there that I've asked a lot of questions with and just, read through their comments, and that's where I'm learning this stuff. It really is all about networking. If you want to get better at fishing, talk to more people and go more places and learn more things with them. So it can kind of come down to asking the right questions as well. So I get a lot of different questions through my different social media and just my Facebook page, and it's about how you come across. If you message somebody and say, hey, where'd you catch that brown trout? There is a 100% chance that I'm not going to tell you. Don't ask for people's spots. Don't ask for your friends' spots. Spots are the hardest thing to find. Now, I will tell you every other thing that I know about catching brown trout. I will tell you anything you want to know. Places that they live, what to look for, what lures, where to go at what time of year. But you got to get out there and find them yourself. And I've had people message me that just are like, just tell me where to go. I just want to catch a really big one. Just tell me a spot. And like, I'm not going to tell anybody else. And it's not even, it is partially about, I don't want you to tell somebody else. But more than that, I mean, it's about, you need to go do that for yourself. Like, you're not going to feel as good about catching that big fish if somebody else told you exactly where to catch it. Maybe some people will, but I certainly know that I don't. You learn more the more you fish with people and the more you talk to them. Don't be afraid to reach out to people, but ask the questions the right way. If you just message somebody and say, hey, how'd you catch that fish? What'd you catch it on? It comes across, a little bit abrasive. Just ask people, hey, I'm trying to learn how to catch XYZ species and I don't really know how to fish for those. This is what I've been doing. It's not really working for me. And then you're going to find people that are going to be very helpful and want to give you information and help you start putting those puzzle pieces together. And once you start putting those puzzle pieces together, then things become much more fun. The more fish I catch, the more fun I have, at least. Yeah, sure, we all love to put the sunset picture on Instagram after we haven't caught anything and say, well, at least it was a beautiful day on the water. But let's be real. We all wanted to catch some fish. So I'm going to wrap this thing up here. I want to wish everybody a happy new year and set some goals for yourself next year. And if you want to, message me and let me know what they are. I'd love to hear them. If your goal is to catch a sturgeon, or, maybe it's not anything to do with fishing at all. Maybe you want to go elk hunting or moose hunting. I'd love to hear what your goals are and hear how you're going to do it. And maybe I'll learn something from you. I'm sure that I would. With that being said, I hope everybody has a great 2019. I really appreciate you listening. Look for more information on how you can win the 2-day guided fishing trip next year. And thanks a lot.